Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another book video. Today's video is going to be my August reading wrap up, talking about all the books I read in August. Don't mind the backgrounds, I'm in a different location. If you guys don't follow along with like my vlogs and regular content, we are living at my in-laws house temporarily while our custom home build is finished being built. Hopefully my next month's reading wrap up will be in our new house. That's the goal, that's the hope for now, that we'll be in there by the end of this month. So let's hope that that's accurate. But for now, I'm sitting at my mother-in-law's desk. Their decor choices are very different than ours, so don't mind that. August was, I think, the worst reading month I have had this year so far. I don't know, maybe January. Let me just look. Yeah, I just went and checked. I thought that maybe I read less in January, but no, I read 11 books in January and I only read 10 this month, 10 and a half, because I had like a pretty big DNF. It was just a really not great reading month. First of all, because we were so busy packing our house, moving, doing all of that. Like packing and moving with 2 kids already is like so crazy. So I just like didn't have a ton of time for reading, but I was also in just such a major book slump this month. It was really hard for me to find anything to like hold my attention. And I just found myself like scrolling on my phone, doing like a lot of TikTok and stuff rather than reading this month, which is like very unlike me. Normally I have like very low screen time and like very high reading time because I read on my Kindle. I am pulling up my Goodreads so I can see like my ratings of everything. So I'll have that linked down below too if you want to follow me on Goodreads. It sparks joy for me when you guys send me friend requests on Goodreads, so do that. The very first book I read this month was The Confidence of Wildflowers. And I went into this like a little skeptically because I have heard that people either like really love this book or people really don't like it. It either goes like one or the other. And I was one of the people who just did not really like this one. Yeah, I don't know. It just like did not wow me. I did not really like any of the characters. First of all, the name Thayer, I hate that name. I think that is such a dumb name for a character. But this book really just like gave me the ick. Normally age gap does not really bother me. Like I've read more dramatic age gaps than this and like it hasn't bothered me. Like it's not my favorite, don't get me wrong. But this one, for some reason, like maybe it was just the writing or like the context of the situation, gave me the major ick. It felt a little predatory. Like I couldn't get behind the romance of it. Like Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas, that's similar age gap. I think it's actually bigger than this one, and that one I could like get behind it, but this one, major ick vibes for me. I didn't even give a description of this one. This one is an age gap romance between a girl who's like 18 years old or something, somewhere around there, and her next door neighbor who is like 37 or something, and she like babysits his kid, and it's like their romance. He's like a total grumpy guy, grumpy sunshine, age gap, whatever. But yeah, I felt like the writing was really boring and like overly descriptive about some things. I remember them describing like the pop fizz of her opening a Diet Coke like 100 times, and like that was just so unnecessary and like repetitive and just, I don't know. There's like a huge major tragic thing that happens at the end of this book, and I was not expecting that. I had no idea what was coming. It was really awful and I hated reading about it, and I just like was not prepared for that. So maybe I'll like write down here the trigger warning in case like it's a huge spoiler, which is why like people probably don't talk about it, but I hated reading about it. So I'll put it down here in case you want to be prepared. This is a duet, so there's a second book, and I actually read like the first 20% of it because even though I really did not like the first book, I gave the first one 2 out of 5. It ends on a total cliffhanger where you like really want to know what happens in the next book. The second book already has a trope that I hate so much. I hate this trope. Spoiler alert, I'm gonna say what it is. It's secret baby. You find out at the end of the last book that she is pregnant, and then she does not tell him. And then I think they're reconnecting like 4 or 5 years later, where she has been raising his child that he doesn't know he has. And I think that that is such a fucked up thing, to not tell somebody that they have a child and to just not let them make the choice to whether or not they want to be a parent to that baby. I know that this is fiction, but this shit happens in real life too, and it just is I hate that trope so much. It is one of my least favorite things to read about ever. So I literally just stopped reading it because I didn't want to read it in the first place anyway. But like, if somebody could tell me what happens in the resurrection of Wildflowers, I would really appreciate it, because I want to know how that book wraps up, like what happens, but I don't want to read it. So the second book I read this month was Mr. Wrong Number by Lynn Painter. I love Lynn Painter. I love her writing. I'll probably read any book she puts out because her writing just like really works for me, and I really liked this book too. This is a romance between a girl who is kind of like a hot mess. She's just like a disaster of a girl, like always kind of having like big dramatic issues and just like a hot mess of a character. She gets a text message from someone who's like supposed to be texting somebody else. He accidentally misdials her and sends her a text message like, "What are you wearing?" or something, and she like responds back being goofy, and that kind of like sets in motion this back and forth text relationship between her and this guy that she doesn't know. It was really funny. The banter was like really good in this. Lynn Painter knows how to write such a good book boyfriend. I will say that the main character of this book was pretty unlikable. Like, she was kind of like a hot mess, but she also had just like a lot of personality flaws. She was not like a super likable main character, but the male main character totally made up for it. It goes from like him thinking she is so annoying, the worst thing ever, to being like absolutely obsessed with her, and like watching that evolution was just the best thing ever. It's like what I love in a book. So I gave that one a 4 out of 5. I definitely recommend that one. Okay, after that I read another good one. I did have a few good ones this month. The Devil in the Deep Blue Sea by Elizabeth O'Rourke. I don't know how to say her last name, but this is the second book in the like Devil series. This book was just fantastic, delightful, so good. I have never read a book by this author either that I did not love. I love this author, and I feel like she is so underrated. She does not get the recognition that she deserves. I feel like if she would like remarket all of her romance novels with like a dorky cartoon cover, they would probably just pop off. But oh my god, her books are so good. There's some character overlap from the first one too. Definitely read the first one in the series too, because I absolutely loved that book also. This one is about Drew, and she is in a very off again on again relationship with her musician boyfriend Six, and he invites her to go on a family vacation with him and his family to Hawaii. So she flies out to meet him and his family, and then they all find out that he got arrested in like Japan or something, and he cannot make it to the vacation. But she's already there, she's in Hawaii, and it's kind of a romance between her and her boyfriend's brother, who is the perfect man. Elizabeth O'Rourke also is so good at writing like the perfect book boyfriend. She writes perfect men. This one was so good. I really liked this book. This one also had like really good banter. It was really funny, but it was also like really in-depth too. There was a lot of other like more serious underlying things going on. I gave this one like a 4.5. I don't know why I didn't give it a 5. Thinking about it now, I feel like it deserves a 5. After that, I read Faking with Benefits by Lily Gold. Before I read this, I did not know what reverse harem meant. I knew that this was going to be a romance between a girl and like 3 different boys. What I didn't know about this was that it was going to be like a polyamorous relationship between her and 3 different boys. I thought this was going to be like her just dating 3 boys and like, you know, gonna pick one or whatever. Apparently reverse harem is where you are in a relationship with all of them at the same time, like, and they know about it all together. You know what I mean? Like, she has 3 boyfriends and they all are like chill with that, and they are all sleeping together simultaneously. I wasn't expecting it, but I was here for it. This book was really wild. It was really spicy. It was quite the adventure to go on, and I really liked it. It's kind of like New Girl, but if everybody in New Girl was in a relationship together. This is about a girl who, she's like neighbors or like lives in the same building with these 3 guys who are all roommates, and they are all like the best of friends, have been like friends forever, and she's been friends with them for a really long time too. And so there's like that really funny like friendship dynamic between all of them. Oh, the 3 of them all do a podcast together, and then she is like a guest on their podcast, and they're like kind of like teaching her how to date, and then they all end up dating each other and all sleeping together. And I feel like I had to consciously ignore a lot of the like completely implausible, like completely unrealistic aspects of the story to not like ruin it. But like if you don't think about it too hard and you don't like try to pick it apart too hard, it's just like a really fun, spicy read. So I gave this one a 3 out of 5. I did really like that book and that author, and so I tried to read another one of her books. I think it was called like Nanny for the Neighbors or something like that. And I've discovered that this author, Lily Gold, she pretty much only writes these reverse harem stories that are a female main character with 3 men. Like that's just like her niche, and that's all she writes. And so I tried reading Nanny for the Neighbors, but it was literally just the exact same thing as Faking with Benefits, which maybe if I hadn't just read that one, I would have liked this one a little bit better. It just felt like the exact same thing with different character names, and I couldn't get into it. I read so much of it too. I think I read like over 50%. Yeah, I read 69% of it. I should have just finished it. But I literally could not get myself to finish it. I just did not want to reach for it. I didn't even care like what happened in the end. Like it just, I don't know. For some reason that one didn't work for me. Probably because I was trying to read them back to back. You know, I should have given time between them, but whatever. So I didn't finish that one. I ended up doing a Kindle Unlimited audiobook. I did If You Tell by Greg Olson, and I downloaded this thinking that it was going to be like a mystery thriller, but this is actually retelling of a true story, and it was horrific. If you're into true crime, this is like a true story, and it was like a pretty wild story, so you might like it. I'm trying to remember what this girl's name was. It's telling the story of Shelley Notick is her name, and it's basically just telling the story of how she was a horrible, abusive, manipulative, psychotic mother. It goes into detail about like how abusive she was to her kids, her family, her husband, like the awful things that she did to like everybody. The whole thing was like unthinkable. Like it's just so wild to know that like this is like a real thing that happened, and she got away with it for so long. She was killing people. The level of manipulation that she was able to like use on other people, it was just like unbelievable to read about. Also, I'm pretty sure she got out of prison this year, even though she was like awful, literally murdered people. Like she did not get life in prison. So I'm not 100% sure. It said at the end of the book that she was being released in 2022, so that's freaking scary. This is a true story though, so I don't read those, but I don't recommend it just because it was like literally traumatic to read about. After that, I read Hopeless by Colleen Hoover. And listen, when I first like got back into reading again, I was so into Colleen Hoover. I love Colleen Hoover. I think that she's an amazing writer, but it just feels like lately, every time I read one of her books, it just gives me the ick. Like I'm just not really loving Colleen Hoover books like I used to. And I don't know if that's because like now that I've like read so many more books, I have like a bigger point of reference for like what I like, but I don't know. I didn't like this one. I felt like the first 60% of this book was just painfully boring, really hard for me to get into. I never wanted to reach for it because like nothing was happening. It was so slow paced in the beginning, but I've heard a lot of people say that this is their favorite Colleen Hoover book and that it's really good. So I just kept pressing along, trying to like get to the good part, to like see what people were talking about. The major twist that happens at like the 60% mark, like the really big twist, I did not see coming, and it was a good twist. It was shocking. I was like, whoa, where did that come from? It was good. But also this is another one where I feel like I should have either like checked trigger warnings, or like I just never heard anybody talking about the big thing that happens in this, which is extreme sexual assault of a very young child by a parent. There was nothing crazy descriptive, thankfully, but it was described enough to just make it, I don't know. I did not like that. It was hard to read about. It was just like, ugh, I wish I would have like known going into it, you know? Yeah, so I don't know if it was like the book slump that I was in or if it was this book, but I really did not like this book. I just had like a major ick after reading it. I have no desire to read the second one in this series at all, and I just like don't really have any desire to read any more Colleen Hoover books at the moment either. Like, I don't know. I gave this one a 2 out of 5. I think you should just know there's like big major trigger warnings going into this one if you're going to read it, because yeah, I did not like that. So then after reading like 5 books in a row that I just did not like and feeling like I was having the worst book slump ever, questioning if I even liked reading anymore, I just went for something that was tried and true, that I know was gonna entertain me, that I knew I was gonna want to pick up and get through, and that was Miss Sophie Lark. So I started Sophie Lark's Kingmakers series. I read her entire Brutal Birthright series towards the beginning of this year. If you have read the Brutal Birthright series, which is her first Mafia series, these books are about their kids. So like all the couples in the first book, these are their kids. I've heard people describe it as like Mafia Harry Potter, which I never read or watched Harry Potter, so I don't know, but it is this like kind of secret boarding school for mafia kids where they like learn how to be mafia people. It sounds stupid when you describe it out loud, and it kind of is, but it was so entertaining, and I am like already really looking forward to reading the rest of the series. This book was interesting because it was from 3 different point of views, which I felt like made it really entertaining to read. It was a bit of a love triangle book, and you got all 3 of their perspectives, which I really liked. It was pretty slow burn by like Sophie Lark standards, because normally she just gets to like the hot and heavy like pretty quick. It probably wasn't until like 60 or 70% into the book where you got any like spice or any like stuff happening. I also really liked both love triangle people. I feel like normally in a book like this you're really rooting for one, but like I was rooting for them both, and I'm like excited to see what happens with the other love interest who did not get picked in this one. You know, I want to know what happens with him. So yeah, I really liked this one. I gave it a 4 out of 5. I can already tell that like the writing in this series has improved so much from the first series. You can tell that she's like a newer writer in those books, and like the writing is nothing groundbreaking, but she's really good at writing like entertaining characters and entertaining stories. Then I tried mixing it up and reading a literary fiction book. I read The Brighter the Light. I actually listened to this on audiobook also, because this is also a Kindle Unlimited audiobook, and I hated it. This was so freaking boring, and I don't know if that is because I am just like bored by anything that is not like heavily romance based. I have a hard time being like, what is even the point of this book if there's no romance? Every time that I went to Kindle Unlimited to look at audiobooks, this one was always at the top of the page. I just was like, okay, fine, it must be good if it's like always like right here, top rated. Girl, no. This book bored me to death. I don't even know how to describe what it's about. You get like 2 different generations of the same family. So you're following like the main character who is in present time, January of 2022. Like this is a new book. And also her grandmother when she was like growing up in the 50s, and just like some of their like family drama. Nothing happened in this book. This book was so boring. I gave it a 1 out of 5. It makes me want to never try to read a non-romance book again, but I want to like dabble in non-romance, you know? I don't want to be like, I only read romance, and like sometimes the repetitiveness of reading romance can be like a little annoying. So if you could recommend me some like literary fiction books that don't freaking suck, I would appreciate that. Thank you. Last 2 books of the month, I started the Ravenhood trilogy by Kate Stewart. The first book is Flock. I feel like every time I've ever heard anybody talk about these books, they will not give a description of it. They're like, it's better to go in blind, not knowing what it's about, and just go for it. After reading it, I think that that's dumb, because then you're so freaking confused the entire book, which I think even if I knew what it was about going into it, I would be confused the entire book. Also, I feel like the names and the covers of these books really lead you to think that this is like a fantasy book of some kind. Like I did not know anything about what this was about going into it. I just went off of recommendations and I started it assuming that it was a fantasy book. This is not a fantasy book. That is just discreet covering for this spicy freaking book that this is. This is just a romance book. It's not fantasy, so don't go into it thinking that it's a fantasy book. Kind of like a darker romance. I don't want to give too much away about it, but it's basically about a girl who is like estranged from her father, but has to go and live with him for a year in his town. And he's like super rich, owns like a massive company. He's like a billionaire, and like everybody hates him in that town, but she has to go live with him. And she ends up kind of getting caught up in this. It's like a gang, but it's like got Robin Hood vibes, where like they are stealing from like super rich white collar criminals to like help out the local community. But this book is super confusing and it's super frustrating to read because all of the characters in it are super evasive. Just like nobody is just like straightforward at all the whole time. The female main character in this book is very young, and I feel like that is very reflected while you're reading it. Like you can just tell her age, which I guess is good writing, but it's like frustrating because you're like, girl, like grow up. But like she's young, so like she's acting how a young person would act. I gave the first one a 3 out of 5. It was pretty good. Even though it was frustrating to read, I did enjoy it. The second book is called Exodus. It's just a continuation of the story. I just did not like this one. This one felt even more frustrating to read, and I feel like I just can't like talk too much about it without giving away anything from the first book. But this girl, she is just begging and begging and begging this boy to love her, and he is like, no, I don't want to be with you, I don't love you, leave, go away. And she like won't listen. That is like not a trope that I like. I don't like having the main character like literally beg for this boy to be with her when he is being like nothing but awful to her. It has such good reviews, people love it, and they're like, oh, this one like tore me apart, like broke my heart. I'm like, why is this girl literally begging for this boy to be with her if he doesn't want to be with her? If he doesn't want to be with you, goodbye. Like you don't want anybody who doesn't want you, you know what I mean? I don't know. So that one just like was not the vibe for me. I did not like it. I gave it a 2 out of 5. And there's one more book in this trilogy, and I have like no desire to read it now after the first 2. I want to read it because I just love finishing things and like being able to say like I read the whole thing, and like I want to know how it wraps up, but I don't know if I want to know enough to actually read it, you know what I mean? If you have read this full series, let me know in the comments if you think that it's worth it to read the 3rd book or not. I just feel like after having like the worst reading month of my life, I just want to read fun books only. I want to only read books that I really want to read and that I'm really excited to read. So the thought of continuing the series is just like a no for me. But let me know, because I can be swayed for sure. If somebody comments and says like it's so good, definitely read it, then okay, fine, I will. But yeah, those are all of the books that I read this month. Not a great reading month, but hopefully this next month is gonna be good. If you have any books that you think I should add to my TBR, please leave them in the comments. I feel like so at a loss about what to read next now, so I definitely need some like really good recommendations. Leave them for me. And if you've read any of the books that I talked about in this video, I would love to hear your thoughts on them in the comments also. But otherwise, that is it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow me on Goodreads, and I will see you guys all in my next video.